And remember, we're not here opening up the Grace case. There's a commission of investigation established by the Oireachtas to do that, and we have to show respect for that. But we're here specifically to do with the record of the PAC meeting.
Welcome, Mr. O'Brien and your team. You said in your opening statement that the evidence that you presented to the Public Accounts Committee in the past was, I quote, given with the utmost of good faith. You will be aware that at the last sitting of this committee where you were present, a number of allegations were made. One, that you misled this committee when you were here in the past, and secondly, that there was and still is a cover-up within the HSE in relation to how the issues surrounding Grace's involvement in the foster home were dealt with. So my first question to you is, do you accept that you misled this committee, and do you accept the charge that there was a cover-up?
I've just corrected part of the record of that committee, which means that the information I gave was not accurate, so I do accept that. That's the only correction I wish to offer. In relation to the question of a cover-up, I'm very conscious that...
Well, sorry, the first part is important because the question I asked you was, do you accept that you misled this committee?
Depends what you mean. If you mean, did I actively mislead the committee, the
yes.
answer is definitively no, I did not actively
I will test that, but you agreed that you gave inaccurate information to the committee.
Yeah, information that I believed to be correct at the time I gave it, yes.
Okay, and then the allegation of a cover-up, if you can just respond to that very quickly.
Well, there are many aspects to the allegations that I hear in the media around cover-up. I believe the central one relates to events.
I'm going to have to come in here as chairman and say an issue of a cover-up is going to be investigated by the Commission of Investigation. And Mr. O'Brien is here to correct the record. And like of the previous PAC meeting, and if you can show me in the PAC transcript where you believe...
Chair, what I was clarifying with respect to yourself was two issues. One, that there was charges made not by me but by other members of the committee who were on the previous Public Accounts Committee, that one, there was a cover-up and they were made in the Dáil as well, and two, that there was that the witness misled the committee. So that's the reason why the... no, if you don't want to deal with that, that's fine. I'll move on to the other issues.
No, I'm clear.
Oh, I'm clear as well. I'm very clear.
No, what was said in the Dáil is not our...
No, it was said in here. Sorry, with respect, it was said here.
Yeah.
There was members of this committee, serving members of this committee, who alleged that there was a cover-up. Okay?
Yeah.
And Mr. O'Brien is obviously saying he doesn't believe there was a cover-up, and we can just move on from that.
Excuse me. I actually haven't said anything.
Well, if you want to take the opportunity then to answer the question.
What I need to be clear about is, before you decide what my answers are, you ought to wait to hear whether I give any. I have made no comment on whether or not there was a cover-up.
Well, you have the floor.
I'm taking the chair's guide that this is...
So you're not going to answer the question?
Look, let's be... Shall we have a straightforward conversation?
Absolutely.
Here, I have come here to respond to the request from the chairman. I have made a statement and I will answer any question that relates to evidence I've previously given to the committee. So if you would like to ask me about evidence I've previously given to the committee, I will happily answer.
Okay, well, you're not going to answer that question. So I'll move on to the first topic that I wanted to deal with.
The reason I'm not going to answer the question is because it's been decided that the Commission will make a determination about that matter.
We'll move on to the first issue I want to deal with, which is the liaison with An Garda Síochána, and that issue that you did address in your opening statement here today, and was the centre of controversy in terms of what you said when you were here in the past. I've asked the Secretariat to... I sent on a short clip, it's a minute long, where a question was put by Deputy DC, who was a former member of the committee, and it just sets the context, and you responded. So if we can just maybe hear that first.
Left it at that. Is that effectively the answer to the committee here today?
No, Deputy, it's not. And if I can come back, I know the term stonewalling has a certain cachet. I'm not stonewalling you. I'm prepared to answer any question I can that doesn't involve me effectively publishing the two reports that An Garda Síochána have asked me not to do. So I want to be very clear, that's the only reason they're not published. They were accepted when they were submitted, the Divine Report in 12 and the Resilience Report in March of last year. The recommendations have been pursued, and the intention and the commissioning of the Devine report precedes my own time, but the intention, and it's written into the terms of reference, was for publication, and it's been prepared carefully so that it can be published. But it cannot be published in the face of a Garda objection to its publication.
Remind us again, I've asked you this question a couple of times in the last...
Okay, so we can see in that clip that you were asked a very straightforward question as to why the report was not published.
I just want to be helpful to people who are watching. We have just viewed that minute transcript on our screens of the meeting of the 2nd of February 2016. The public may not have seen it, so I just want the public to know what's going on.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. A straightforward question was asked, Mr O'Brien, which was why the report was not published, or the reports were not published. And you said that the report was not published because, and the only reason, and you say the only reason why the report was not published was because you had been given advice or instructions from An Garda Síochána not to publish the report. In your evidence here today, you say that that advice was given in April 2015. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Why did you not say that when you were asked that question by Deputy DC last year?
Because I had, in prior testimony to a previous committee, actually read out the correspondence from Arthur Cox. Sorry, our legal advisers, I should say. I shouldn't name them at the time. So I felt that Deputy Deasy was well aware of what I was referring to. But nonetheless, on the date that I said those things, they were absolutely true.
And when did the HSE receive the Devine report?
In the middle of 12, I believe.
In the middle of 2012. So a decision was taken not to publish the report in 2012, 2013, 2014 and up to April 2015 before you got any opinion from An Garda Síochána. So why was that decision taken? Who made that decision? Who made the decision not to publish the report up to the point when you did get confirmation from An Garda Síochána? Who made the decision not to publish the report?
As I've outlined quite extensively in my opening statement, the local HSE was operating in accordance with the standard protocols that had applied throughout the history of the HSE and the former health boards in relation to not making publications.
So you're talking about standard procedures. You're talking about...
Whether it was a live Garda investigation.
Yes. So what you're telling me here today is that there were standard procedures and processes in place in the HSE that while a live investigation is ongoing, that you would not publish reports of that nature. So in other words, what you're telling me is that it was the HSE who made the decision up to April 2015 not to publish the report, not any advice from An Garda Síochána. Would that be fair?
Well, if at any point prior to that there had been a decision, an affirmative decision to proceed to publication, then what happened in April, or rather February 2015, is exactly what would have happened then. That there would have been an application for guidance from An Garda Síochána via our lawyers, in particular because it would have been necessary to agree the exact form of redactions that would be required.
But Mr O'Brien, with respect, a decision was only taken in February 2015 to trigger a process in which the reports would be published. You say in the middle of 2012 that your department had received the report. So from the middle of 2012 up to February 2015, no action was taken to publish the report. And you say, and I want to be fair to you here today, what I'm hearing from you is that the reason for that was because you were adhering to standards and processes and procedures within the HSE. So my point to you is that the decision not to publish the report was based on that and not on any advice from An Garda Síochána.
It was based on first principles which would apply to any public sector body, not just the HSE, and they are recited and given considerable credit by Dignam in his report. And I quoted the relevant sections in my opening statement. So while, yes, that consideration was one that took place within the HSE in the context of
prior to March 2015, had you sought an opinion from An Garda Síochána in relation to whether or not you could publish the report?
I've been clear that it was in February 2015 for the reasons stated in my opening.
You're not answering the questions I'm putting to you.
Well, I am.
With respect, you are not.
I am.
And no, listen, we've had enough stonewalling on this issue, and I have to insist on the questions being answered. No, sorry, I've asked a straightforward question here. Yeah. And the question I'm asking is this: if I can put the question, I'm putting the questions fairly, Cathaoirleach, and you're answering them in the way you want to answer them. The question I'm asking you is this: prior to March 2015, did anybody in your organisation, or did the head of the HSE, contact An Garda Síochána and seek advice in relation to whether the reports could be published?
I think I covered this in my opening statement, where I made clear that there were many contacts, but the contact that sought the agreement of An Garda Síochána to publication was initiated in February 2015.
So the decision not to publish the report, and that was only taken in February 2015.
No, that was a decision.
That was
a decision to seek to proceed to publish,
yes,
not to not publish.
I understand what happened in 2015. In February 2015, you got advice from your legal team. In March 2015, you wrote to An Garda Síochána. In April 2015, you got the advice.
Slightly the wrong way around. In February, we instructed our legal team to engage with An Garda Síochána.
Yeah, and I'm aware of all of that. Yeah. What I'm putting to you, and you're not answering the question I'm putting with respect to you. All I'm asking you is this. You've made it clear that you only triggered that process in terms of getting advice from An Garda Síochána in February 2015. So from the report landing in the HSE's lap in 2012 up to February 2015, the reason for not publishing the report was not any advice from An Garda Síochána, but it was, as you put it, down to standard procedures in terms of how these matters are normally dealt with. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's reinforced by Dignam's view of the appropriate processes for public bodies.
And I don't believe
when dealing with live Garda investigations.
And when we look at and if we were to play back that clip again that was played, that would not be clear with respect to yourself. That would not be clear, because the inference and the narrative from that clip was that you were the only reason, and you were very clear, the only reason why the report was not published was because of Garda advice. That's now not the case.
Well, I think if you look at the totality of that meeting, rather than just one clip, you'll see that there was a strong narrative throughout the course of the meeting that I should there and then be publishing the reports. And at many times I sought to explain, and I think Deputy Fleming may have been present, that I would find it much easier if I were in a position to give the committee the reports. I wouldn't be having to seek to explain things that I knew and the committee didn't. But at that point in time, there was a live, in writing, repeated many times, objection from An Garda Síochána in response to advices from them that had been sought at my initiation, and there was no question at that point in time that I could publish them. So the comments I made were contemporaneous and relevant to the date in question. I have to insist that that's the case.
Deputy Cullinane, your time, you will come back, right?
Okay, I'll come back to the second issue.